At the beginning of Path of Exile 2, Act 2, we arrive with the Hooded One to the Vastiri outskirts. The Vastiri Plains, our destination, are huge. They take up a large portion of the continent of Rayclast, and the plains are more aptly described as the Vastiri Desert. The distance we need to travel and the harsh conditions mean we need a ride. And we have stopped here because a Maraketh caravan has also stopped here. The Maraketh are the native people of the Vastiri, and those Maraketh that travel across the plains do so on elaborate, glittering caravans of gold and silks. When we ask one of the Maraketh named Zarka for a ride, she says they're unable to leave due to hyenic raiders harassing travelers. If we can remove the threat, we can join the caravan, so we do just that, finding the leader of these hyena men, Wrathbreaker, and earning our passage. Although Zarka made the deal with us and is certainly decked out in ornate gear, she is not the leader of these Maraketh. That would be Sekhema Asala, who honors our bargain. The Maraketh are a matriarchal society known for the strength of their warriors, and Asala is the Sekhema of the Ardura. Already it sounds like I'm talking in a different language, so I think it'd be useful to quickly go over the Maraketh words these NPCs use in their dialogue. An Akara is a tribe or a group. The Ardura are an Akara. Sekhema means leader, so Asala is Sekhema of the Ardura Akara. You will often be called Jingak, which means outsider or non-Maraketh person, unless you are the sorceress, who was banished from her own Maraketh Akara for her experimentation with elements. The sorceress is not from the Ardura, but everyone here recognizes her and does not call her Jingak. The word Dekara means warrior. Shambrin used to be a Dekara for the Ardura Akara. Is it coming together now? And finally, a new Maraketh word from PoE 2, Balbalak, which means traitor. While the Ardura are one of the nomadic groups of Maraketh, traveling on their caravan, the Maraketh Akara that players of Path of Exile 1 meet are stationary, guarding the entrance to Highgate Mountain for hundreds of years, the mountain where the beast resided. After the events of PoE 1, all Maraketh Akaras agreed that it was their collective duty to stop corruption if it ever appeared again, so that no single group would be stuck with that immense responsibility. All Maraketh are now honor-bound to find and destroy corruption if it ever returned to Rayclast, and the Ardura we now travel with are already aware that it has. The Ardura on the caravan are Sekhema Asala, Zarka, and Shambrin. Asala, unlike Count Gianor of Act 1, was not born into leadership. She was chosen, as she is the strongest and most capable among them. She is young, but she is definitely wise and driven. And hot. Zarka is the tail woman for this group. Her job is to learn, remember, and recite stories related to the Maraketh, both past and present. Her stories aren't limited to the Ardura either. When I make the in-depth lore video for Act 2, Zarka will be heavily featured, and she is my favorite character for obvious reasons. The sorceress player character was supposed to become the tailwoman of her Akara, but rejected the role, which is possibly related to her current banishment from her tribe. Shambrin was once a Dekara or warrior of the Ardura as mentioned, but she has been blinded in battle. She now acts as the weapon master, although she is learning blind fighting to once again be a warrior. The Maraketh value strength and usefulness, and while she tries to mask it, Shambrin is saddened by her new lower status. Because of their promise to fight corruption as a culture, the Ardura were already chasing the trail of the Seed's corruption. but they do not know Oriana, the Countess, who the Ezamites said was from the Vastiri Desert. There are many other Maraketh Akaras, but Asala assures us that no Maraketh would harbor someone who possessed the beast due to this honor-bound promise to destroy that very same beast. If Oriana is from the Vastiri Desert, but not with the Maraketh, she must be with the Faridun. So who are the Faridun? The Faridun aren't a separate society from the Maraketh. The Maraketh, with their emphasis on usefulness, abandon any babies in the desert they deem unfit, disfigured, disabled, simply unwanted, and they leave these babies in the desert to die. Long ago, those who survived the desert became the Faridun, and now seek out any abandoned Maraketh babies and save them to be raised among the Faridun. A group of Faridun likely exists for every single Maraketh Akara that exists. The Hooded One describes the Faridun as the shadow of the Maraketh. They rescue those children and raise them on the outside looking in. The Maraketh are a harsh society. Even though they have committed themselves to fighting corruption, so they are on our side, it's hard to see them as good. The Ardura's caravan is pulled by slaves. Apparently the slaves are prisoners who would otherwise be executed, but is working them to death instead really the moral choice? We don't have much choice. The Maraketh were always our only option to travel across the desert. Sekhema Asala has even found our first location where the beast has been, Maudun Quarry. Inside the quarry we find the Book of Jamanra, which is a vow to unite the Faridun and Maraketh into one society. We must show them that casting us off was a mistake. We must show them our strength. A rallying cry for the Faridun to come together and force the Maraketh to acknowledge and accept them. Below, in the Maudun mines, we can see pieces of what looks like a caravan being built. It appears to be a large-scale operation. We also find a person trapped in a cage and guarded by a crazed woman with a flamethrower. This fiery menace is Rudja, the Dread Engineer, and she has clearly been touched by the seed of corruption. We kill Rudja, who immolates quite spectacularly, and release Risu, Faridun defector, from the cage. Risu joins us on the Ardura caravan and tells us about Jamanra, an ancient Faridun hero whose goal was to unite all the Faridun as one Akara, to convince the Maraketh to accept the Faridun once and for all. This sounds very similar to what we just read in the Book of Jamanra. According to Risu, Oriana has raised Jamanra from the dead using corruption. Oriana had met with the Faridun Risu defected from before she had the seed of corruption. Risu tells us that Oriana was not part of the Faridun, but came to them from the south. Every location we encounter the Countess Oriana is not her true homeland. I have ideas of where she is from, or at least the southern place she came from most recently, but I will save that speculation for the in-depth video. She promised the Faridun the power to take back what was theirs before leaving for Ezamir. Resurrecting Jamanra was her method, but predictably the corrupting power of the beast sowed madness in Jamanra and the Faridun that now pledged to follow him. Jamanra and Oriana did not want the Faridun to join the Maraketh, but to wage war on them, and any Faridun who did not want to make war or were afraid of the beast got locked in the Maudun mines where we found Risu. In preparation for this war, Jamanra plans to feed the beast more bodies to make it grow, but not just any bodies. He wants to feed the beast the Maraketh's most respected and powerful dead. Our Maraketh friends are uncertain about Risu. Not only is she Faridun, but she is also a Faridun traitor, a Balbaluk. While Risu and the Ardura's motives are currently aligned, there is palpable tension between them. Asala says that Risu will live or die based on her usefulness in pursuing the beast. But Risu does hold more information about the Faridun motives than the Maraketh could surmise on their own. And Shambrin says of Risu, "She will never be accepted by the Ardura. She is a traitor of her people." On the other hand, her recent blindness makes her sympathetic to the Faridun. "Publicly, I will decry them. Privately, I understand. I have suffered a small portion of what they must feel their entire lives. I expected them to turn on us eventually." We head to the Halani Gates, following the trail of corruption. Jamanra and the Faridun have already infiltrated the gates and closed them, preventing the Ardura caravan from continuing the pursuit. We would be stuck if not for Risu, who knows of a secret path to reach the top of the Halani Gates called Traitor's Passage. Asala says that she will let Risu live if this information is true, but otherwise Risu will be left to die in the open desert again. Brutal. We enter Traitor's Passage, and inside we find someone trapped, bound by runic seals. These runic seals bear no resemblance to the binding runes of Esamir in Act 1, but clearly did the trick. Shambrin tells us that this person, Orbala, was trapped down here as punishment for being a traitor, with the intended sentence being 1,000 years. Unfortunately, the Maraketh kind of forgot about Traitor's Passage. And so Orbala the traitor has been trapped for at least twice that long. And I believe Orbala the traitor is the origin of the new Maraketh word we hear, Balbaluk, which means traitor. Neat. What's not so neat is that as soon as we release Orbala, she attacks us, and she does not hold back. She does drop a coin needed to attempt the trials of the Sekhema, and if you attempt them, she will be your guide. We continue on through Traitor's Passage, and Risu's information was good. We end up at the top of the Halani Gates. Asala joins us to fight through the Faridun, who are standing guard, and she opens the gates to allow the Ardura caravan to pass through. As we make our way, tendrils of corruption start appearing, and the final mechanism to open the gates is broken. We continue on, and at the end, Jamanra himself is there to confront us. He calls himself the Risen King in defiance of the all-female, non-monarch leadership of the Maraketh. Sekhema Asala fights Jamanra alongside us, but before we can kill him, Jamanra retreats. We follow him, but he has conjured a magic sandstorm to prevent our pursuit. Asala says we must battle sorcery with sorcery, and we return to the Ardura caravan. Even with the Halani Gates open, we cannot travel through the dense, unnatural sandstorm Jamanra has conjured. Risu is allowed to stay, and live, because her information on Traitor's Passage was true, but she has no advice to stop the sands. Instead, Zarka, the Tail Woman, tells us of an ancient item called the Horn of the Vastiri that was said to control the winds. While the original was lost, Zarka says we can trace the steps of the Maraketh's greatest heroine, Orbala, to recreate the horn. Orbala created the horn on her final adventure, and we need 3 items from 3 locations to recreate it. Hopefully our arts and crafts version works. The 3 locations we can go to are Keth, the Mastodon Badlands, and Valley of the Titans. You can go to these locations in any order, but I will start with the Mastodon Badlands. These Badlands are a giant boneyard, even more desolate than the Vastiri Desert itself. Asala says the Badlands are proof that a culture can vanish entirely if the world changes too much. It's unclear if she's saying a culture other than the Maraketh lived here in the Badlands and vanished, or if she's just saying that because the place is absolutely covered in bones. We fight Iktab, the Death Lord, and Ekbab, the Ancient Steed, a skeletal mastodon. We take a tusk from Ekbab once we defeat them to use as the body of our horn. When we hand Zarka the tusk, she says, "These tusks are truly worthy of Orbala's steed." And if you listen to Zarka's recounting of how Orbala created the horn, she says that Orbala's steed, the mastodon Ekbab, gave her its tusks. No wonder this tusk is worthy of the horn. It is literally from Orbala's own steed. It's the same tusks. Next we head to Keth, the ruins of a giant city. Asala says Keth was once the seat of power for our people, now a buried testament to a glorious past. The Hooded One says that Keth was glorious. The waters flowed in patterns crafted by artisans. The hanging gardens could impress even the most jaded heart. The Hooded One has a lot to say about Maraketh culture and history, actually. Way more than he ever said about Esamir. When asked about the Faridun, he not only knows of them, but knows that they have gone by many different names in different eras. He tells us that Sekhema Asala reminds him of a young woman he knew in Keth. Based on the state of these ruins, it's one thing to know the history of Keth, but to have known someone who lived here? The Hooded One must be extremely old, ancient even, thousands of years old. Who is this shade, really? We will know soon, but back to the ruins of Keth for now. The Wayfarer's Stone in the Vastiri outskirts, where we began, promised us a path to the bread bowl of the world, the verdant land of 7 waters. Keth was that destination, the city of 7 waters whence bounty springs. The Wayfarer's Stones are a strange mix of Izaro's voice lines from PoE 1 and the poem Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. Keth certainly no longer has lush plains and verdant forests to feed empires far and wide. As we travel across the sand-swept ruins, we eventually find an entrance to the lost city that remains, buried underneath the sand. Although there is still no lush greenery, some semblance of the wealth and luxury of ancient Keth remains underground. We find the Halani Shrine and stumble upon a conversation between an abomination called Azarian, the Forsaken Sun, and the water goddess Halani. It seems the water goddess, before she was a god, abandoned Azarian in the desert to die. He was rescued by the Faridun, as many abandoned babies are. Halani was told by her Akara that her son died, so she lived her life, becoming the goddess of water eventually, unaware that her son lived, and was aware of her and her eventual divinity. He resented her until he died. But this all happened thousands of years ago. Azarian the Forsaken Sun has been resurrected by the Seed of Corruption, and wants to offer his mother, the water goddess, as a powerful body for the beast to feed on to please the new Faridun king, Jamanra. Halani, however, was not resurrected by corruption. She has been awake since the original beast was killed in Path of Exile 1, 20 years ago. We kill Azarian and enter the chamber the goddess was hiding in, and find that she was not hiding, she was unable to move. Halani lies on a stone slab, guts open, clearly suffering. It seems that while she and the other gods were asleep in the time of the beast, she was dissected and has woken up to this agony. She requests we end her suffering with the convenient ever-burning cinders nearby, and return to the caravan with her essence of water. Neither Asala or Zarka had ever heard of a Maraketh goddess of water, which particularly bothers Zarka, as knowing these kinds of tales is her whole thing. Somehow all memory of Halani, the water goddess, had been lost, until now. Finally, we head to the Valley of the Titans. The area is surrounded by giant statues, or more likely, giant corpses. Titans, one might say. Asala's information is that she is forbidden by the terms of the Third Pact from invoking the Rite of Flame herself. She must send an emissary, as must they. I will discuss what the Third Pact might be in the in-depth video, but for now, we must act as Sekhema Asala's emissary to them. We interact with 3 seals next to 3 titans, which light up each titan's eyes. Once we have interacted with all 3 seals, an entrance opens for us to descend into the Titan's grotto. Inside are even more titan corpses. We traverse winding paths that stretch over a seemingly bottomless cavern until we find Zelmarath, the Colossus, waiting for us at the Dais of Reckoning, site of the Rite of Flame. Zelmarath must be their emissary, presumably the Titans. Perhaps some of them still live. We defeat him and take the Flame Ruby, the final piece of the Horn of the Vastiri. Zarka recreates the Horn of the Vastiri for us. She tells us that when Orbala blew her horn, it was so powerful every tent across the plains blew open. The story of the horn was Orbala's final adventure because after, Orbala was made the Sekhema of Sekhemas and was so beloved and powerful that she became a god. Another brief history lesson is needed here about the gods of Rayclast. Before the Beast and Corruption, there was another power on Rayclast, the power of Divinity. Many thousands of years ago, mortals could ascend to godhood if enough people believed in their power. This did not necessarily mean respect or admiration. Divinity could be achieved through fear, through mystique, or through religious fervor. Those mortals who became gods lived much longer than men and were more powerful as well. In Path of Exile 1, after the player kills the beast, the gods of old are awakened on Rayclast once more. That's because the power the beast has, corruption, is created by the beast absorbing the power of divinity. The beast sapped the gods of their divine power. That is what put them to sleep. But this power didn't just dissipate. The beast spews out corruption and thaumaturgy, the name for corrupt magic in this world. Corruption is an opposite power to that of divinity, but a side of the same coin. They are inextricably linked. Orbala was alive during a time before the beast, and so the admiration of the Maraketh turned her into a god. When she ascended, she took the name Gerukan, Queen of the Wind. She is actually one of the gods we fight and kill in PoE 1. We get the honor of blowing the horn. While Zarka's makeshift Horn of the Vastiri isn't quite powerful enough to make us ascend to godhood, it's powerful enough to destroy Jamanra's magical sandstorm. We can now pursue Jamanra to Deshar. Deshar is a city where the Maraketh put the bodies of their most important dead. They do not bury the bodies. Instead, they have built tall spires so the dead can return to the sky and enjoy the sun, not hidden from it in the earth. This unfortunately will make it a lot easier for Jamanra to take their bodies and feed them to the beast. Before we enter Deshar, Shambrin has a favor to ask. Her friend, perhaps lover, Liluma, traveled to Deshar alone 3 moons past, and hasn't been heard from since. Shambrin is worried about her and wants to know what happened. She tells us that the weak and unfortunate have a tradition of leaping from the heights of Deshar to the dunes below. Their bodies will be in the sand, the greatest fear of the Maraketh, but they will be close to those honored. She wants us to find out Liluma's fate and bring back any evidence. but the others cannot know of this. Shambrin's fears were right. Liluma has killed herself in Deshar. We find her body among the sands along with a final letter. We can bring the letter straight to Shambrin, but you also have the option to show it to Zarka and Asala. Both will reprimand you for doing something so careless. Asala says that we are lucky there are no names on the letter, otherwise tradition would demand unhappy duties of her, and that she values all her Dekara. The implication is that Shambrin would be punished, maybe even killed, because Liluma killed herself. This is another example of the harsh and morally questionable Maraketh society. Shambrin can't even mourn, let alone acknowledge the loss of Liluma for fear of that shame of her suicide bringing punishment. When you offer Shambrin the letter, she doesn't read it. Its existence is enough for Shambrin to know Liluma's fate. To be fair, Shambrin couldn't read it even if she wanted to, because she is blind. She will burn the letter, place a stone near Liluma's body in secret, and never speak of this again. We travel across the spires of Deshar, and once again Jamanra waits for us at the end. He does not fight us, but magically weaves a bone giant together, creating Torgal the Defiler. We defeat Torgal, but it seems if we want to actually defeat Jamanra, we must bring the fight to him. We make haste to catch up with the Dreadnought, his absolutely huge war caravan. You can tell that the pieces we saw being built in Mawdun Mines are indeed pieces of this Dreadnought, and you will likely take in every detail as you fight through brutal enemies in tight spaces on this excessively massive caravan. At least the Faridun have their caravan pulled by dinosaurs instead of human slaves. At the head of the caravan, we find Oriana, Jamanra, and the beast together. The seed of corruption is now well and truly a beast. Instead of tentacles in a cage, it is now very humanoid in appearance, but easily 10 times the size of any man. It has a head, arms, a spine, splayed out and chained to the very front of the Dreadnought. Oriana's plans are helping it grow very quickly. As we approach, Jamanra is facing the beast, perhaps feeding it Maraketh bodies. Oriana spots us and tells the king to take the power he was promised. We fight Jamanra with Asala once more. Very unlike Count Gianor, as Jamanra senses the tides of battle shifting out of his favor, he cuts the caravan section in half so that Oriana and the beast can safely continue on. Our half of the caravan abruptly stops, and we, Jamanra and Asala, are all hurled into the sands. Asala is knocked out, and we must face Jamanra alone. Once he is on the brink of death, we wake Asala, who jumps up and cuts off Jamanra's head. Although the kill still feels a bit bad in the moment, there was a good reason. After everything that has happened, Sekhema Asala has chosen to give Jamanra, ancient hero of the Faridun, an honorable death. When he was alive, Jamanra had united the Faridun, and entreated all the Maraketh Sekhemas to acknowledge the Faridun. Zarka's recounting of Jamanra's story implied he just dropped dead out of respect for Maraketh leaders at that meeting. But there is evidence in PoE 1 that when Jamanra met with the Maraketh Sekhemas, they poisoned him, and that's how he died. If Jamanra committed suicide, that would be a dishonor on him, as we saw with Liluma. But poison is considered a coward's weapon, and if a Sekhema used poison to kill Jamanra, that would be a massive dishonor on the Maraketh. No matter what Jamanra's original cause of death, Asala's beheading gives him a respectable death as a fearsome warrior. Not only that, she will place his body in Deshar, among those most venerated Maraketh. In the traditions of the Maraketh, this is a huge honor, and a sign that Asala might lead the Maraketh in a more progressive way. And Asala not only allows Risu to stay with the Ardura for proving herself, she says that every remaining Faridun who fought for Jamanra should be allowed to choose whether they want to continue as Faridun outcasts or join the Ardura, acknowledged as Maraketh, because they have proven themselves as warriors. This is something so unprecedented that the Hooded One described the relationship between Faridun and Maraketh as the inevitable consequences of life's haphazard nature. Their separation is so concrete it was inevitable. Asala's offering breaks thousands upon thousands of years of brutal precedent. While there are still extremely questionable Maraketh traditions and beliefs, this is a step in the right direction, and it's probably the most compassionate decision a Sekhema has made in a long time. Our final stop in Act 2 is the Shrine of Gerukan, the goddess who was once the mortal Orbala. We followed her footsteps to create the horn as Orbala, and now we end at the memorial to the goddess she became. The Hooded One is waiting for us at the shrine. Next to the statue of Gerukan, the Hooded One finally reveals his true identity. He is actually Sin, the thief of virtue, the same god that the exile in PoE 1 worked with to recreate the beast as the Dark Ember or Seed of Corruption. That explains how he had the seed to begin with, and the glowing blue eyes, and the smoke powers, and the knowledge of the gods, and the memories of ancient civilizations, and the being asleep during the time of Jamanra, and the love for Gerukan. The gods we did not kill in Path of Exile 1 still roam the earth, and after the seed's creation and its use to kill the god Kitava, Sin took the seed and tried to hide it from mankind. Somehow, Oriana knew that the Hooded One was Sin, and what he carried with him. She has been the one hunting him in recent years. Sin tells us that he was married to Gerukan in the distant past, and they had a daughter named Shakari whom he betrayed. This is the story of why Sin created the beast. Thousands of years ago, Gerukan and Shakari, wife and daughter, were fighting. But not just fighting, they were at war. And they were both so powerful that Sin apparently felt all humanity was at risk if they were allowed to continue fighting. Sin created the beast, knowing that its power was to absorb the divinity of gods, and it would put all the gods to sleep. When the beast was killed in PoE 1, Sin helped the exile kill both the risen Gerukan and Shakari. While it's understandable that Sin feels guilt over having to kill his power-hungry wife and his jealous and vengeful daughter, what makes less sense is how Sin thought that the beast would be the ultimate peaceful solution. We've seen through our travels that the beast must be fed absolutely atrocious amounts of bodies to grow. It was able to be kept in a little handheld device for 20 years when it was not being fed. When we fight Jamanra on the Dreadnought, there are at least a few hundred bodies ready to be fed to the beast. And the beast is pretty big, but when we kill the beast in Path of Exile 1, it is the size of a mountain, even larger, stretching out for miles. This new beast has been fed a few hundred people and is not yet the size of a titan. What did Sin have to do to make the original beast that large? And was he completely unaware of what effects corruption could have on mankind? The beast is the source of all thaumaturgy, virtue gems, which are the skill gems we use, And we can see as we follow the seed how it causes madness and chaos. Undead rise, man becomes monster, the very lands become twisted and dangerous. Sin's logic of creating the beast to save humanity from his wife and daughter fighting just doesn't quite add up. But it seems that Sin might be finally grasping the folly of his creation, as he has gone through all of this, killed his own wife and daughter. Yet here he is fighting to destroy the beast he created once again. Unfortunately, the beast is now too large and powerful for us to contain it by mortal means. Sin believes an ancient culture may have ways to stop the beast. The Vol, the most powerful and notorious ancient culture, were absolutely steeped in corruption. Like the Eternal Empire, but even more so, they used thaumaturgy and corruption to become the most powerful civilization on Rayclast of their time, arguably ever. There are rumors that an ancient Vol city has a device that could destroy the beast. So the Ardura caravan takes us to the sand-swept marsh, where we hope to find this ancient device, if it even exists. Thank you so much for watching. It's your boy Noodle. If you couldn't tell, I really enjoy the story of Path of Exile 2 Act 2. It's my favorite so far. I love the characters and I love the scenery. The in-depth video is probably going to be absolutely atrocious in length, but I hope you enjoyed what we have so far. If you haven't checked out Act 1, I definitely recommend doing that. I'm going to go through the story of Acts 1, 2, and 3 before doing the in-depth video. So I know it'll probably be a little bit until you get all the spicy details about Act 2, but until then, I hope that you can stay sane, Exiles.